Today we have a very unusual organization for you. We have the Kodaikanal International School. Many of you may not know that this is one of the oldest international schools in India. It's over 115 years old. It's, I think it began in 1906. It's 114 years, and it's to the credit of the school that for over a century they've been serving the community, not just in India but around the world. It is also India's first international baccalaureate school. Now, some of you may be familiar with Kodaikanal International School. Many of you may not be familiar. So before we start, we'd like to give you a quick introduction to the school through a video.
Any visitor will tell you is something special, something unique. Set amidst the rugged charm of the Palani Hills in the Western Ghats of South India, it's difficult to describe KIS, its heritage, its unique place in international education, without first making reference to our studying location and the abundant gifts of our surroundings. Honestly, students are fortunate to be inspired by the environment here, to take part in our many decades-old hiking program and camping program at the school. At the same time, there is an inherent responsibility to learn from the natural world around us and to be aware of our impact on that which sustains us.
The IB program is a world-renowned college readiness program that KI has woven into the curriculum. The IB philosophy of education puts students in the center, very inquiry-based, student-centric, for the students to excel.
Here, learning is more experiential, learning is hands-on, and learning happens outside of the classroom.
Learning takes place in every way, shape, and form at KIS.
What we do is we find a fun game that's related to that subject and we play it. And people really understand it.
Strong academics form the foundation of a lifelong quest for knowledge and experience. Students can do well on an exam, and they should, but the far more important question for us is how do they do in life?
Learning, as we know, has many layers. The arts, culture, music, sports, they provide constant opportunities for our students to work hard, to strive, to perform, to fail at times, ultimately to succeed. Student engagement with the many activities at KIS, we believe, allow for their talents, their creativity to emerge and to be appreciated.
Corey's theatre program has a very, very close place in my heart.
I teach through a lot of experience-based lesson plans. You know, in 5 years from now, they're not necessarily going to remember that exact lesson. They're going to remember the experience, and they're going to say, remember that time in drama? And they're going to have resources that they can use for the rest of their lives.
It really brings us all together as a community, and yeah.
A student and a dorm parent, we share a very special bond. A dorm for a student has to be a safe haven, and that's what we make it for them. We believe that happy dorm for a student means we produce happy children, and if we have happy children, we produce successful students. And so we want the dorm experience to be very unique and very special for all our kids.
One of our main focuses as an institution is to create an environment where students are able to think globally but act locally. We provide a platform where students are able to gain real-life experiences in the local community by reaching out through outreach programs and various other activities.
What graduates long remember about KIS is the relationships they've formed here. The lifelong bonds formed with each other, certainly, and with their mentors, their teachers, their administrators, their dorm parents. So KIS strives to equip our students with the dispositions, attitudes, and to develop and practice empathy, responsibility, compassion, humor. This is not just a slogan at KIS, this is really a way of life.
Many of you have probably been to Kodaikanal, so you know what a lovely setting it is. Let me tell you that having some familiarity with the school, I can tell you that it is unique. It is in a Sylvan setting, as it were, which you had a brief glimpse of, and its facilities are across 2 or 3 campuses, and it is a place that most people would aspire to be if one visits. So that's the kind of school we're talking about, and a school which has been there for 114 years. I'd now like to introduce you to the principal, who is Corey Stixrud, well known as Corey Stixrud. He comes with a liberal arts education, as you can imagine, and he is an old Kodaikanal International School hand because he studied there himself. And he has a very interesting background. He has a Master of Arts degree in teaching from Concordia College in Portland, where he received the Outstanding Student Award for Elementary Education in 2000. He also holds a certificate in the teaching of writing from Lewis and Clark College's Graduate School of Education and Counseling, and a Bachelor of Arts degree from Lewis and Clark, specializing in international affairs. So you can't get a more qualified person to be the principal of a school where teaching is involved, and he has a degree in international affairs. Therefore, the right principal for an international school. And Corey has been shaping young minds and inspiring them to be lifelong learners for almost 2 decades. And his wealth of experience in education includes being a classroom teacher, a curriculum planner, a literacy consultant, a writing mentor, and youth program coordinator. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Corey Stixrud, Principal of Kodaikanal International School.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming on to this webinar, Corey. We're really privileged to have you with us. We also have the Dean of Residential Life, Ravi Balaraju, who also has an extremely interesting background. Ravi's professional journey began in Singapore as a classroom teacher, specializing in the English language and physical education. I've heard of English language teachers and I've heard of physical education teachers. I haven't seen a combination of both, but he was a combination of both. And he served 30 months full-time in the military in Singapore. So he's got the discipline of a military person. After 7 years of teaching, he found himself as a student in the classroom of a seminary in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he graduated with distinction with a master's in religious education and a Master of Arts in Greek. Hopefully what he's saying to you today will not be Greek. So he comes with a background both in terms of teaching as well as in theology. And he's also got a background in the military. You can imagine the kind of backgrounds we have in terms of the resource people we have at Kodaikanal International School. So very warm welcome to you, Ravi.
Thank you very much, David.
All right. So what we're going to do today, the process we're going to follow today is a question and answer kind of a format where I will be having a conversation with Corey and Ravi, and they will decide who will respond to the question. And I believe they have slides as well as video to support what they're saying. So let me start off by asking, what were your priorities when the seriousness of the pandemic became evident? I think Corey, you might want to kick this off.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, David. Thanks for having us on, and we're just excited to engage with you today. And the priorities, I think that we actually sent a letter to parents as early as so David, we knew about this early on, and we actually wrote a letter to our parents in early February. Because even then it looked like it could eventually impact us. We were thinking about this. So we were thinking about this very early, but I think like most institutions, when it first really took hold, it felt extremely unreal or very surreal. But our priorities, I think, were first in order. They were the health and safety of our students, obviously their academic progress, and then of course the logistics and practicality of travel. Where would they be? Would they be able to travel home? Could they travel home? If so, how were we actually going to get them home across India? And of course, being an international school, we were also worried just about getting them to various other continents. And then of course, when we realized that many of them would need to stay in Kodai for some time and they couldn't travel, our priorities came to, for instance, how could we feed them, given that there was a strict lockdown in place, and at times our workers, our security guards, and our school cooks would be stopped and told not to go into town or come to school. So those were our priorities. Were very basic, right? They were about taking care of our students, feeding them, getting them home if we could get them home, and then of course throughout all of this, making sure that they were still learning. What made the start very interesting also was that this happened just a couple weeks before, in early March. We had a big school event. It was our annual field day, which attracts hundreds of parents and alumni. And so we, at that point in time, we didn't want to halt the event, but we knew we had to take some steps to begin the process of keeping people safe. So that was the birth of our, here's a bit of a timeline we made, but it was really the birth of our screening protocols and all of that. And we knew somehow that what was very important was to collect data. And that actually became very important for us later, both internally, but also, medical authorities, government authorities came to us later and said, hey, there was a foreigner traveling through Kodai. Did they happen to come to your event? And we were able to actually help the government because we just kept data from early March. Those were our priorities.
So how many children did you have to get back home before the complete lockdown? That must have been an incredible logistic exercise, as well as concern for safety, that they got away safely, right?
Yeah, it was a logistical, and I know Ravi, as the dean, was front and center in all of this, getting them from the dorms and talking to the parents. And I should just say, we didn't send all of our students home. I mean, we closed school, but I think that, Ravi, there were about 70 students remaining, right? Who could not physically get home because of travel restrictions. Is that right, Ravi?
Yeah, right in the middle of March during the long weekend, we had most of our students who had traveled, and those who had stayed on for the IB exam, the grade 12 and the grade 11, they came up to about 102 or 3 students initially. Thereafter, when the parents were planning their way back home, to having the kids back home, it dwindled. Those numbers dwindled, and eventually we had about 80 students with us.
But yeah, overall, I think we had to get 400 some students home. Many of those in India, but some were traveling back to the U.S., some to different parts of Europe, Korea, and then different places in Asia as well, the Middle East, and Thailand, and then Bangladesh. So it was a logistical. We really, hats off to our travel office, our dean's office, for organizing this.
Yeah.
So this was really in the middle of the last semester of the school year, right? How did you ensure continuity in learning with this huge disruption that had come in?
Yeah, no, that was our one of our big priorities, and we had to close down with about 2 months remaining in the semester. Our last full day in person, it's on our timeline, was March 12th. That wasn't actually by design, because we had scheduled a short 5-day week. And I think March 12th was the last day of school before that 5-day kind of vacation. And classes were meant to resume kind of on March 17th. But as I recall, I think it was about March 15th, I called the academic leadership team into my office, and I said, we need an online platform ready in 10 days. And I said, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be ready. We will likely be closing school. We will likely be sending our students home. And I can still picture the grid that we drew on the board. It had 4 columns, and one said content, one said platform, one said implementation, and one said training. And our job that day was to brainstorm our plans in all 4 of those columns. And someone, as someone always does, someone said, "What about cost? What are we going to do? And I said, my response was basically, this is a question of, this is our identity as a school, education. And if we get this right, if we get academics right, regardless of the cost, this will pay dividends for us." And so we ignored cost considerations in our first brainstorm. And we went on to get through this crisis, through the immediate. And we actually did start online classes on March 25th. And we did our best. All of our teaching staff then proceeded, as they were teaching, to take a very rigorous Google Classroom course with a 3-hour exam at the end. So the teachers became students for a significant part of this semester. And I think there's a slide of that, but that really made a huge difference. And that training column was really important. We realized early on that our teachers would need support. They would need training, and they would need just a lot of kind of professional development in teaching online. So that was one of our priorities. And then the other thing, of course, that even after 1 week of online learning, David, we surveyed all of our students and their parents. And we said, how is this platform working after 1 week? And we adjusted accordingly. The other aspect of this that I can remember is very important, is that the International Baccalaureate, you mentioned it in your introduction, the IB, which is the curriculum we follow. It was very important for us to ascertain, to get information from them. Would there be exams, for instance? What requirements might change in the IB? So our academic team was very busy in March sorting this out. And then something else that occurred to us early on, when we were thinking about this, was the social and emotional, the potential social and emotional impact of the pandemic on our students, especially on our grade 12 students. So that slide really shows the certification that each one of our teaching staff went through, and it certainly paid dividends. Could you show me the next slide so that I'm not getting too far ahead of my slides? I'm sorry. So yeah, this is really what I'm talking about. It was really important for our grade 12 students, the class of 2020. Grade 12 is an extremely important time in these young people's lives. It's also a very important year at KIS. There's so many experiences that students look forward to here. This was the last few months of their time with lifelong friends, not to mention just all the events we have, senior dinner and graduation, and with all the parents who come up. So we did what we could to have at least semblances of these experiences. And so, for instance, we had tributes, online tributes for all of our grade 12 students, and parents could write in, and their friends could write in, and teachers could write in, and really celebrate these young people. And I think, we did our best in a difficult situation. I think we tried to really buoy their spirits, because we knew I knew as a graduate myself who was in grade 12 here many years ago, I really understood how devastating it was for them to leave school in the last 2 months. The grade 12 students by this time had left. Most of them had left, and so we created an online graduation for them.
A fond farewell on behalf of all of us at KIS. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you who have joined us in celebration of the graduating class. Welcome. First and foremost, a big thank you, class of 2020, to each one of you for choosing us as your school, whether it was for 2 years or 14 years. This place, the quad, the flag green, bendy field, the chapel, the dorms won't be quite the same without you. You should be proud of what you have achieved. You have become part of the story of KIS, and we have become a part of the story of your life as well. You make us who we are, and it's been an honor and a pleasure to get to know you and have you be a part of the Kodai family. So the story of your life, perhaps it took root here in Kodai, or perhaps we were one stop on your journey. No doubt, you take many memories with you as you head out into life. In the long run, we hope that your time here, the things you've learned, the friendships you've made, the experiences you've had, will serve you well. This is not a long ceremony. A few memorable speeches, a musical tribute, and a farewell video from the staff at KIS. It has been put together with a lot of love and with our sincere best wishes to each one of you and your families. I thank everyone involved, Shanaika and Senti for their music, Shtuti and Dami for their fine acting, to your valedictorian, Ishita Pandey, for her upcoming speech, and to our chief guest for this occasion, Mr. Arjun Rampal, whom you will hear from shortly. Love and affection. Goodbye and farewell.
It was very important for us, and then we got one of our celebrity alumni, from Bollywood, who had graduated in the early '90s, and he had come on. I think that was Arjun Rampal, and he gave a speech, a very inspiring, a very good speech to the students. We celebrated these young people, and that was just part of our strategy. So yeah, that was taking care of not only their academic needs, but their social and emotional needs as well.
Okay, so my next question to you is that, so the semester ended, you ensured there was all online teaching that was going on, the graduation went well, the students did well, they passed out, but then the school closed for the summer. And how did you prepare for the next school semester, which I think was starting in July, with the kind of uncertainty that was prevailing?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, David. And I think one key advantage we had over many other schools is that our staff stayed in Kodai over the break. Even though we have an international staff, they really didn't, it was dangerous or risky to travel home for many of them, or they knew they would face isolations isolations coming back. This allowed all of us, right, to prepare, to finish our Google training, and just generally be in place here in Kodai, and this so that it was easy to start up again, because we had been, waiting here for school to start up again. This paved the way for the school to also gave us time to make some key changes. We formalized our approach to all things academic and online. We published the KIS Online Learning Handbook, which you see here in the in the slide, and we were able to improve our school's infrastructure, increase our internet bandwidth. We were also able to upgrade our teacher tools. So if they said, listen, my projector is not working well, or my mic, or my I need new software, whatever it was for their class, we were able to do that. And so we really prepared carefully, knowing that we would be online. We were hoping it wouldn't be quite as long as it's turned out, but we knew it was very important. So we prepared a lot for that. This was also a time where we carried forward with our health and safety protocols. Our screening protocol became very important for our staff who were coming to school every day to the campus. And now we have these in place. And another thing we did was, so this shows in academics, right on the screen, it shows some of the planning we did, what the day would look like, what our assessment models would look like. We also prepared locally. So we helped local medical facilities. We helped renovate a wing of the government hospital. We purchased a cryogenic oxygen generator for another hospital in town. And we saw this as really helping the town in significant ways, but also at the same time preparing for student return.
So the new semester started with entirely online education to students who were all at home primarily, except for
That's
the ones
right.
who were in school.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's it. It really, that's how it started. You know, it was really about making sure that you know, our students were that we had prepared for it. So, for instance, you know, that we had trained our teachers to handle online situations.
So the, you know, the school's priorities have always been based on the student experience. So how did you ensure that as you pivoted to online education, that the quality of education remained what you wanted the students to have?
Yeah, a little secret here, David. So many of the great ideas that we implemented were actually student ideas. You know, at least originally that had come from discussions with students. We have an incredibly impressive group of student leaders, known as our student council, STUDCO for short. And I think one of the things we did is we listened to them, and we reached out to them as well. We surveyed them constantly, and we were, so for instance, this shows a student survey, but you know, they gave us input about what was working well and what wasn't working. Ravi, you talked to student, you were kind of the staff facilitator for student council. What was your experience working with them?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. I think the student council body were fantastic. They were very proactive. You know, they would call me, you know, to share their concerns about online learning and how, you know, that could be improved for the rest of the student body. In fact, that student council that we were working with were put together on a virtual election. And that was also a brainchild of the student council themselves, that they need to have another elections online. And so we did that. You know, we had a virtual nomination platform, and then thereafter elections. And this brand new student council came up with very fantastic ideas on how they may form various groups, and how they may also involve their classmates, the class of 2021, to see to bring across ideas on how they may improve the library aspect, the school overall, proposing e-resources for the library so that the students will not be shortchanged, you know, while they are in remote places. And so we did all that with the input of the student council. Moreover, they would liaise with me through email and also through phone calls to see how best they could help the rest of their peers who are also learning online, and also to reach out to the rest of the academic faculty, you know, when they have concerns about assessment and how that can be also spaced out as well. So they did a very fantastic job, I must say.
Yeah, and we also included some students on key committees that prior to that didn't really have students. You know, we had one of our grade 12 students joined our social and emotional learning and living committee. So looking at ways to you know, keep things positive for students, and you know, we thought about it, and we welcomed the student in to our committee, and you know, he was helping us reach out to vendors. He was, you know, we were involving him in decisions about, okay, like strategically, would it make sense to go with positive education techniques from, or another style? And it was just a really rich experience. And even all the vendors we talked to, you know, I think we actually, with one vendor, we actually got 12 students to come and sit with them. But primarily it was this one student, and different vendors were like, that is a unique and wonderful thing to have a student talking to us about this experience. So that was rich. And another thing we did is I think that we tried in every possible way to keep our students, I would say, busy in productive ways. So both academically, as well as, we started a range of clubs and activities and events that happened after school. Just for example, we started a coding club and an eco club, or we carried on clubs that had existed in person, but we moved them virtually. A writing club. I started engaging with a group of students from all the way from 8th to 12th grade, and we would have a weekly meeting, and we called it a conversation on race and bias. And it just became a very involved and interesting conversation that I know will impact the school, in wonderful ways, in when students return. And it already has. I mean, these students have already, and I think it's really helped them as well, focus on things that they find interesting and compelling, but that furthers their thinking. So I guess that's, we really, as you said, I mean, everything is still about the student experience, and trying to keep that fresh.
And you've talked a little bit about the facilities that you enhanced to ensure there was online education possible. But did you use this time to enhance the rest of the infrastructure that you had as well, other than just the internet bandwidth and all of that?
You mean in terms of our buildings and things like that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting. The timing of all of this was very interesting. We obviously had to wait until the lockdown was sufficiently over, because we were doing everything we could to stop bringing people on campus. Primarily that was the lockdown, that was safety. We didn't know clearly the extent of the pandemic and whether it would get a lot worse or better. So we were very cautious that way. I think in Kodai and Tamil Nadu, I think in September, especially the town of Kodai is a tourist town, right? And in September, I think they opened it back up for tourists. And right around then, we realized that school would not be opening in 2020. And so we embarked on a series of projects that are currently going on. Some are near completion. We're redoing our school dining room. And doing some work in our alumni hall, which is kind of where we have assemblies and dramas and music recitals and things like that. So yes, we have been looking at that aspect, and depending on how long the pandemic lasts, we have more ideas planned. So
in fact, I was going to ask how you would be communicating the status of the COVID pandemic in Kodai and surrounding areas to parents, especially, who might be anxious about getting the kids back. But I see the slides already there.
Yeah, so this was really interesting because we had developed this, and we were in the midst of developing what it would look like, and this website we called the info space. And the idea of the info space was that any parent, any student, any staff member, anyone could log on and see the status of COVID in Kodai, the status of the school in terms of were there school members that had COVID, or were they in quarantine? And it's a lot more extensive than just this. This is kind of the dashboard, right? But there's a lot. There's a info. There's a kind of a bulletin board in there. There's a message from the principal that's updated, and then there's you can kind of see at the top of the screen. It says med facilities at KIS. We have a whole list of medical facilities at the school as well as in town. And then, this website really features a lot of different things. It has our handbook for online learning, our protocols for, isolation screening. It has our charter, really our commitment to students, both in their health and safety, both online as well as in person. So, so we developed this, and it's just a remarkable. The minute we posted this, David, and within kind of 6-8 hours, I think it had been seen in like some 20 countries. Wow. So we knew that it was being used and it was being looked at, and that was the idea. So it's a tool, and
So I think
students deserve some credit for this as well, because remember, Ravi was talking about those virtual Studco elections. One of the students ran on a platform of communication, with the school, and really worked with us and inspired us to really come up with a a comprehensive site.
So I was about to say, I think the way you all have communicated with parents as well as the students throughout this process is what enabled the school to kind of maintain that very high level of engagement and actively work with students to take things forward. And I think involving the students in making those decisions was a very good idea, because they are far more flexible and adaptive and far more familiar with things online, and therefore would have been able to contribute meaningfully.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about the school's reopening? Have you all worked out, a process or what the stages would be? Any kind of protocols?
So on just about a week ago, we actually sent out I think it was November 20th, we sent a communication to our parents on reopening. And the one criticism, it's a very, very comprehensive set of letters with instructions for when students return, all of the guidelines, everything. So lots of infographics, the protocols they'd face, quarantines, what it would look like. And the one criticism we've gotten is that it was too much information. So we think that's a good thing. There was a long letter involved with that as well. And that's great. So we are absolutely planning for reopening. We're hoping it happens in January. So this is, and we've been communicating our plans to parents. And we've been, we also surveyed them in terms of, listen, if school reopens in January, do you feel comfortable sending your students back to an in-person school in the middle of a pandemic? So a lot of planning has gone into that. And so that's our plan. Yeah.
Okay. And, a pivot of this magnitude is extremely difficult, especially given the school's vision and mission, which is very comprehensive. Yeah. So how do you go about ensuring that, leave alone the online education part of it, you were able to, actually live out the mission, as it were?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, David. What I really think happened? I think that following our vision and mission made our situation easier. Actually, at the end of the day, it served us well. It informed our interactions, and it informed our decision making with parents, with each other, rather than turn inward. You know how when there's a crisis, sometimes it's like, okay, we just have to take care of ourselves in this situation. I think we very naturally turned outward in some key ways. We looked for ways to help those in our community, and we got our students involved as well. This is one of our students, engaged in the conversation on race and bias. And so I think it was just that part of our school mission and vision that believes in reaching out, in engagement, in having these deep conversations about important things came to the fore. And I think that was really central. We started a daily check-in. I think this is actually a student who from that conversation came and spoke to the entire school on race and bias and discrimination. And actually from this conversation over time, we have one of the things we started with this daily check-in for students and staff. We called it Vanakkam. And it was a wonderful just device, I think, to touch base with our students. But eventually we also found it was even better to have students do it. So students started to lead the Vanakkam in the morning. And they spoke about, and those were always the best ones. And so we started that. I think that was part of our a mission as a school to make these wonderful young people very informed and involved, beyond the classroom, beyond academics. And so I just think we gave students opportunities to engage in so many ways. And I think I'll be speaking about some of these soon as well. And the other thing I would say is our dorm parents got involved in a unique way. So and this is also, I think, we don't have wardens as dorm parents. They are professional staff on level with our teachers. Ravi, who is the dean and in charge of that, Ravi, how did the dorm parents, our residential parents, get involved?
Yeah, I think it was quite an unusual time, but even as you have mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we have not shortchanged our students' holistic educational experience. And therefore, what we did is we created a virtual dorm for every class. So the dorm parent would connect with the students who are in remote places at a specific time, and there they will inquire as to how the students are doing, in terms of their well-being, whether they are able to connect with their classes okay, and whether they are doing emotionally and socially well, and so forth. So we were targeting through the residential parents to make sure that every child is taken care of, even while they are in their own homes. And there was a very strange arrangement as well, because now we have the actual parents who are at home caring for their child, and we who are dorm parents here are now in remote places trying to care for the child as though we are the real parents. So there was a reversal of roles, so to speak. But to make this really to run this well, we make sure that all our offices in our school remain open. So the activities office was open. We made sure that all the online activities and engagements were there. During the weekend, we would have games online. We would have every class to come and participate with online games and online activities. We had our Spirit Week, where we will have competitions for the most weird dress and so forth. And we would have those winners to be on KISnet, our student portal. And so we found ways and means to engage our students so that though they are far away, they would feel so close to us because we are always engaging with them through the virtual dorm and also through all of us in a very individual way. So I guess, the students felt that we were near, though we were far away. And I think that is the secret of our success so far.
Yeah, I think the most important aspect of all of this is the emotional connect with the school. I think the students feel emotionally connected, emotionally involved, and are able to contribute so meaningfully to the life of the school, although it is online. I think that's a wonderful way of doing it, not just imparting online education, but ensuring that they're involved and contributing. Starting from Vanakam as well as all the other things, it's a wonderful thing. And of course, serving on the committees. I think, Corey, you'd also mentioned something about a mock UN that the students did very well in.
This was, I think over 30 students were involved. We did a model United Nations. We've been doing it in person for a number of years, but this one was virtual. But I mean, what emerged for me from this was just how amazingly responsible and competent our students are at doing these types of events and following through. And it took place, they had school all week, and then they did this over a weekend, if I recall. And we had the picture there is a picture of a girl. She's living in Doha, Qatar, but she was the Secretary General for the Model United Nations, and her and other students organized this entire event. And it was I think, and as an educator, I've seen a lot of MUN events. This was by far the best organized one I've ever run across, in our school or any other school. So it was just, it was a marvel to witness and heartwarming as an educator. Yeah.
My name is Niharika Ghoshal, and it is my absolute pleasure and privilege to serve as your Secretary General for KIS MUN 2020. I'm thankful to you all, the entire KISMUN team who have worked tirelessly to put this conference together. Our mentors, Mr. Corey, Mr. Punus, Ms. Sophia, Ms. Ganga, Ms. Stephanie, and every single one of you that showed us support and encouragement. Thank you for making this conference a dream come true for many. John F. Kennedy once said, "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." This particular quote resonates with me because in this age of ambiguity and uncertainty, there is no answer. We need to collectively try to be comprehensively prepared and equipped to accept the reality and overcome all obstacles. There's only one reason that I assume all of us have assembled here today. We have never seen, at least in this generation, a time so devastating for the entire world. Millions are succumbing to this deadly virus, and existing fault lines are being exacerbated. While Australia was combating devastating bushfires, COVID-19 was only a headline, and it only gained substantial attention when it started spreading rapidly to other nations and was officially declared a global pandemic. For many nations, the state apparatus was too inadequate to contain COVID-19 and still is. I want to reiterate here that in this day and age, issues trivial as they are perceived initially become global headlines soon to only attract attention then. A social media post of George Floyd's tragic death was the reason to attract attention to a long-standing debate and its repercussions. Did we really take so long to stand up against persistent and inherent violations of human rights that have lasted for years? Delegates, it is in your hands to put aside any sense of nationalism, to use your voice and make a strong stand in the world that we live in today. Your involvement in MUN has and is raising global awareness. Revisiting John F. Kennedy's saying, everyone in this conference, watching the opening ceremony, wherever you are partaking in this massive paradigm of collective action, fighting the ambiguity that we are faced with today with proactivity, which has been lacking for the past few years.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think we'll post the video links on the chat. Darshana, if you could put that on the chat, it'll be nice. I also saw that you all used a sense of humor to keep students involved with TikTok videos that were humorous and funny. And Corey, you featured in a number of
So, David, that got over 10,000 hits, I think.
Wow.
And TikTok, we filmed it on TikTok, which is no longer allowed. But that is first, and that was just a way to kind of stay connected with our students and show them we were thinking about them.
Yeah, and I think you did some other fun videos as well. But moving on, these have all been great initiatives to engage and emotionally connect and involve the students. But what about the parents? I see that we've come to a parent survey.
Yeah.
Involving the parents must have been critical too, right?
It was absolutely critical. And we had many, many conversations with parents. We held many forums. We had over, and I saw a question come on the chat about admissions and new admissions.
Yeah.
Even though we were starting virtually, we still had over 50 students join us, even though despite the uncertainty, and many parents, especially of younger children, kind of held back from admitting their student into a virtual school, and that's 100% understandable. But we still had over 50 students join us, and we held forums for them. The first month of school, or the first 6 weeks of school, every week we held a forum for new parents alone, just to kind of handhold a little bit, answer their questions, respond to their needs.
Right.
And so just so many different things like that. So really hats off to our, our communications department. We call it KISCO, our community office, kind of our marketing, but we were having webinars, frequent webinars just every week to reach out to parents. Another great event, and I wish I could show you more of this, but in September we held a virtual parent week for which we made a separate website. We programmed it to the nth degree. We had guest speakers, coming in from across India and internationally from the UK and the US. They would make the time to come and address us. And it was about subjects like social and emotional support, about college applications, about another one on bias, since that's what we were talking about as a school. And then we also had this website that could display student art, student drama works. We had a drama contest for our students that kind of took place over the website. So it was a really fun thing to do for our parents, a great way to engage. But of course, I think that the heart of Parent Week is what we call parent-teacher-student conferences. And so using a personal example, myself as a parent, my wife and I and our son Tarun, we sat down, the three of us sat down and had a conversation with each and every one of his parents, virtually. And we put him in charge. He's in grade 6, but we put him in charge of the conversation. And we said, Tarun, take us through, introduce your teacher, whatever it was. And so he had to he had to moderate a conversation between his parents and his teachers. And that's learning in itself. And it gave parents, I think, and not all parents did this with their child, but a lot did. I mean, that's why we include the student in the conversation. And I think that's what parents are really interested in, right? How is their child progressing in school? Another thing I really need to add here is that when you talk about parents, our school alumni really jumped in to help our parents as well. We have a friend organization in the US called Kodai Friends International, and where many of our alumni are located. And through a grant from a fund that was set up by a Kodai School graduate. So it says Wilder Scholars. So the graduate was named Charles Wilder. He graduated from Kodai School in 1942, David.
Wow, my goodness.
Yeah, but it is profound to me that 80 years later, because of his love for the school, we were able to provide scholarships, to I think it says 55, but it was closer to 60 KIS families for the year. We divided it into semester 1 and semester 2, but over the year, and that's $240,000 US dollars from our alumni to support KIS families. So that's another thing that we were able to do for parents that I think was really important.
And they must have really appreciated it at a time when it's, a lot of people had tremendous loss of income. So this kind of a support must have been really meaningful to them.
I think I can't overstate the importance of this, and how thankful we are to our alumni for their involvement. And what really was great to see was that every family made a video thanking the Wilder. I'm not, as a principal myself, I'm not happy that it's called Wilder Scholars, because that gives the students ideas that they can be Wilder, but we're very thankful to the Charles and Nancy Wilder Foundation. And it just came in our time of need.
Right.
So, yeah.
That brings me to my next question, Corey. What about social responsibility that Kodaikanal International School emphasizes? Were you able to do anything in that area, even during a time like a pandemic?
Yeah, and again, this was one of the marvelous. They say every every emergency or every tragedy or every disaster has a silver lining. David, for us, this was it. So first, as a school, right? When still in the summer, when our students were on vacation, we were responding, I think, by taking care of the immediate needs of the people in Kodai, in our community, as a town that relies on tourism primarily. this became such a crucial effort. So our staff, our staff were donating very generously because we live here and this is our community. Our school, our staff, and eventually our alumni. And we, interestingly, David, we did this through local schools. We wanted students, these local students who are no longer in school, could not benefit from education. We wanted the principals and those schools to kind of get the credit for the food packages that were sent out. Right. And this had the benefit of this was that maybe those students, even though their education has been disrupted by the pandemic, they would stay in school after this because they were supported, by their principal, by their school. So that was really important and something as a school, we're very, very proud of that we did this. We actually fed, the population of Kodai is somewhere, without tourists, the population of Kodai is between like 30 to 35,000 people. We fed over 6,000 people for over a month, which is just really, really remarkable, and something we're proud of. But back to the students, because the KIS student response, I think, has been amazing. That could be a complete webinar in and of itself, David, because. And I think I'm more proud of our students and their work this semester, than in my career in education across different schools. Ironically, right? They engaged. It feels like they engaged more this semester with the local community remotely than ever before. And I think it's because they have been encouraged and supported to respond to need. When they see a need, I think both in terms of compassionately, but also critically, you ask yourself, how can I respond in a way that makes a difference? Right. And that's also back to your question about school values. But these student campaigns that you see here, we raised over 60 lakh rupees through crowdfunding, for the things that are listed there, medical facilities, for education, for elderly care, vocational training, as well as stray animals in Kodai. So just to raise that amount of money, and then, but you know what? They weren't just fundraising. They weren't just kind of, asking parents or, relatives or to donate money. They were on top of these campaigns as well. And we gave them the responsibility to figure out, how this money would be spent. And my favorite story, just a couple days ago, one of the students in the hospital campaign WhatsApped me and said, the government hospital needs a new EKG. What do you, get that to them today. And it was like a Saturday or a Sunday. But I just love how they are on top of this. They are taking this personally to really help Kodai, the residents of Kodai, the institutions of Kodai recover. We responded to the need immediately, and now our students are working in efforts to recover. It was just like, a few days ago, we had another interaction with the school. Oh, here it is. Those are local school principals. Some of them are in tribal communities in town. There's government schools, aided schools, a few private schools. They're all shut down. But our students, you see in the first picture there, that's a screen of one of our students. So we were engaging with them. And our students who are working in this campaign, they were, first of all, this was about, sharing some of the materials that our students had raised funds for, and then also researched what would be helpful. But then this conversation was about, where do we take this? What are your other needs? And what really emerged from this was interesting, because it wasn't like, here's all these things and, take them and we hope that they help, but it was about how we could learn from each other, in terms of, because this is education for our students as well. Right. KIS students. And we talked about what it would look like in person when we could all get together, our students and local students, how we could collaborate, what kinds of things we could do. Technology became very important in that conversation, because a lot of these schools would really benefit from technology. So it was about how we could really empower our students and staff to help with that effort as well. So it was just a remarkable, so I'm so glad you asked that question, because honestly, this has been the heart and soul of a KIS education this semester, in the classroom, as well as these projects that students have been involved with.
And that's a wonderful way of building community, right? In terms of including the other schools in the process.
Yeah, and it just in so many ways, once you start doing something like this, different people get involved. Just in our MUN thing that happened, suddenly someone from the MUN, from the UN had called, and later it just about their interest in what we were doing in this, and he helped out in that conference, but he also then came and spoke to our students on another endeavor altogether. This type of thing, people are writing in to say we presented this to our alumni, and now our alumni are very involved in wanting to help this Education in Kodai project. So it has, I call it the ripple effect. You do something good and it creates ripples that just keep going and going.
Yeah. Can I just say something over here? I think, it's also ideal, to remember that part of our KIS vision states that, that we strive to be a school the world needs.
Right.
So in line with that mission, what Corey has mentioned, it just falls into place what the student endeavor doing to be world citizens, to look beyond Kodai, and to also know that even as they move beyond Kodai, that they will bring all these rich experiences into the world.
Very true. Very true. And that I think you have something called Change Makers or something. Is that?
Yeah. So we held an event for our alumni. It was primarily for our alumni, sometime in September. And I don't know if we have a slide that shows that, but we had a group of alumni, and one was a professor at Yale University, and others were running nonprofits. We had a very distinguished panel, but then we had our student panel as well. And this was highly engaging. I don't know if we can share this. We can certainly change a link, and it's probably on our YouTube page. But these are students engaging on topics. In this particular thing, they were basically talking about their campaigns. But then they were also not only just talking, but they were sharing this with a much wider community. And it just, I think it inspired a lot of people. It inspired me for sure, who was there talking to them, and it inspired our alumni and our staff as well. And it just made us, I think it made us realize just what a fantastic resource we have in our students. In terms of, and that really, this is truly a remarkable way to educate them. So yeah.
I think that kind of beautifully covers that, the last 7 months or so, where despite there being a pandemic, what KIS has been able to do is not only impart education, but give a holistic experience to students where they took charge, they were involved, they brought in initiatives, they did things on their own, they did things for the community, so that at no point did they feel remote, but they felt engaged, and they felt like they were contributing meaningfully to making the school what it is. I think that's fantastic. And I have this last question for you, Corey and Ravi. How do you see the way forward towards the school's reopening? Will you continue to have some aspects of online learning for a blended experience, or will it be entirely a classroom experience only?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we hope school reopens in January. We've been planning to get our students back as soon as possible. We've unveiled our plans. I'm laughing a little bit because we've been talking about students, and how we've unveiled these plans. Just today, we get a letter from our student council with their ideas and their kind of comments on school reopening. So for me, it's like, we know we can do it because our students are on our side working with us to make it happen. So our plans are, as soon as we're allowed to reopen, in the new year, we will do so. And it has to be, I think we have to do it gradually. We have to do it carefully and deliberately, and our students know this. And so we're working toward that. Then, the other question really is, what does this mean for online learning or blended learning, right? And I think I would say that, this pandemic has changed education in some profound ways. It's interesting because we're already experiencing some of those ways, and we haven't defined them yet, but we're living them, which is a really interesting, that just things are moving so fast. We're a residential school, and we pride ourselves on that personal touch, that personal connection,
Right.
personal education. But we've learned, right? We've learned so much about technology, and really thinking about how we might integrate this into education going forward. And we found, right, interestingly, some students, just statistically, right, across all schools across the world, some students are not going to respond to online learning. It's just not going to happen. But some do better. A percentage of students actually feel liberated, I guess, in some ways by being kind of in with a group, but isolated. Therefore, maybe they can comment more freely in a certain way without the person next to them looking at them a certain way. I don't know, but it's been an interesting forced experiment on the education industry across the world. And I think it also, I think that you mentioned this, right? Our students want to return. So it's given everyone a new appreciation for education and the importance of it, and especially that connection between teacher and student. I think our students kind of now really see and understand, how dedicated teachers are, for student learning. So there have been a few good things come out of this, and it's all changing very, very much and changing very fast. But, with a growth mindset, right, that everything's a learning opportunity. I think this has been an amazing learning opportunity for our students, for our staff, for the school.
Yeah. And I think in a strange way, while everybody has been physically apart, it's also brought in closer bonds between the school and the students in many, many ways, including between the teachers and the students, the staff and the students, because they served on various committees and so on and so forth. It's just, it's taken a pandemic and turned it into an opportunity. And I think that's really wonderful. There is one question, and which you pointed out earlier, and that is to do with, what about admissions for the next year?
Yeah. I think like all schools, certainly, admissions became suddenly an issue, especially when you're a residential school that's very isolated and very far away from where students are, where families live in bigger cities. So, and then as a residential school, especially with younger, at least with the younger students, like say grade 8 and lower, parents were just simply unwilling, to send their students to an in-person school in the middle of a pandemic. And then, of course, internationally, as an international school, consider this. I mean, students simply could not travel. Some still can't. That even if we did in schools, they could not return. And so, we did get students. One student who is still this is a wonderful thing about their school. She's actually left the school because she can attend an in-person school in Singapore. And the mom called and I said, yes, absolutely. Attend that in-person school because that's the best thing for your daughter. But she attends all of our sessions. She was in the Model United Nations. She was in our conversation on race and bias. And she's like, I'm coming back as soon as you reopen, I'm coming back. And we're like, great. So that, I think, that's what's invaluable, that relationship with our students.
That's the emotional connect that I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
We have two more questions, one from Dhanashekaran. He says, congratulations, were you able to conduct any exams online or assessments online?
Yeah, so we do have, we absolutely, it was very subtly on one of the slides that was in there. We vastly changed our assessment policy, and we are continuing to change it. Where, you know, and I learned this as a college student. I had a professor who could ask questions that you could simply not study for. You know, in terms of very open-ended questions that are not necessarily only testing your knowledge or some fact that you might have memorized or not memorized, but you would definitely forget right after the exam. And this is a whole nother webinar, but our assessment policy is based on assessments that students do, but also on their participation. And not participation in the sense of whether they raise their hand or talk or not online, but their thoughtful participation, their listening, their ability to, you know, kind of facilitate and promote the learning of everyone else in the class as well. So we've really been thinking a lot about this question, assessment. We have held online exams, and we've put in protocols for this. You know, I think we've trusted our students. Their cameras have to be on, certainly, but you know, if students want to find a way to, you know, to engage in academic dishonesty, I think they can. But you know, I mean, you know, just as a young person in school, you know, students are apt to try different things. But our take is, why not change the model of assessment? And make it where students are actually, you know, say, yeah, look at the textbook, that's fine. But critically think your way through a problem. Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways. My son just had a math test. And you know, the way that the teacher conducted that was just, you know, really well done in terms of having the students take that test without necessarily being able to cheat on that. And then, of course, parents are supportive of this. Parents are also helpful with us in terms of keeping their students honest, because parents are now part of the classroom, which is also an interesting dynamic. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Corey. There's another question. Hanisha says, how do you manage with college placements for your 2020 graduates?
Yeah, I mean, so interestingly, just as for our 2020 graduates who were stopped from going to their last 2 months of high school, also many of them could not attend their colleges to begin with. But I think most of them started online. Two of them, you know, one who a Korean student and a Bangladeshi student, now work for us virtually. So they're interns at KIS. They knew they couldn't travel and attend. Brilliant kids, by the way. Some of our really our highest scores, but you know, their plans were put on hold because they really want to attend a college and they really wanted to go there to the US or the UK in person. And they said, instead of attending online, we're going to give back to our school. So they've actually become interns. One in our marketing department, one in our math department, which is a wonderful thing. But then a lot of them have actually joined their universities, but they've done it online. There was one of our students from Kodai, I think just a month ago, flew to Germany to join his college online. But you know, it really depends. But I think they're all doing okay. They're all getting by. It's not ideal, but they've engaged.
That's wonderful. I think that brings us to the end of the session. Because of the technical glitches, we have run over time. And I thank everyone who's on the webinar for your patience and for staying and listening to Corey and Ravi talk about Kodaikanal International School and answer questions with regard to how the school managed to pivot during the pandemic. And it's not just about online education. It's also about living out the mission of the school. And truly, if you heard everything that transpired, this is a school the world needs. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. The recording will be available on YouTube if you'd like to go back and have a look at it and refresh yourselves in terms of some of the points that were made. We're really sorry we couldn't play the videos, but they're Links are available in the chat. Do copy them and go and have a look at them. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Ravi.
Yeah. Thank you,
And
David.
thank you
Thanks
for
very
the
much.
team at KIS.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.